storyboards are just more of an indication, they're not necessarily the end result or the be all and end all
Yeah,
of
exactly.
the shoot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But Mark, you mentioned Marauders before. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I think that was your first feature. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. Until then, I just made stuff on Super 8. So I started making Super 8 films when I was about 15. I worked at McDonald's part-time to afford the film stock. McDonald's in Burwood in Melbourne.
All right.
No, sorry, not Burwood, Clayton.
You're closer to my area.
Oh yeah, right.
I live right near Clayton.
Okay, yeah. So I worked at McDonald's in Clayton, and that was how I afforded the film reels when I was a kid. And anyway, then eventually I worked for I went to America actually when I was quite young, when I was about 19, and I worked for Orion Pictures for a year and a half in Detroit, and then I came back and worked for Village Roadshow in Melbourne. And then I eventually quit there because I just wanted to make movies, which I already always wanted to do that anyway. But I wanted to work in distribution as well because I figured that it was going to really help me in the long term if I understand how films get distributed and just also the thinking behind people who distribute movies. So I think my experience working at Orion Pictures and being involved in the distribution of several of Orion's films at that time, which were like Lone Wolf McQuade, Easy Money, Class, Strange Invaders,
some Canon films there. Canon Film Group, the Israeli Golan Globus, Lone Wolf McQuade and stuff.
And so I worked for them for a while, and then went back to Australia, worked for Village Roadshow in programming and acquisitions. So, which was a great job because every day we'd watch 2 films. Like that was pretty much, I'd come to work and then at like 10 o'clock, and this was at the time it was on 500 Collins Street in Melbourne downtown.
Oh, right in the city, yeah.
Yeah, that was before they moved up. Where they then moved behind where the village centre was. But yeah, so I worked for them for a while. It was a good job. I really enjoyed it. I think I was surprised when I left because it was kind of like one of those just amazing jobs. But I wanted to do film, so I got a job as a night dubber dubbing porn at a place called South Pacific Video, and they said there's a job available from 11 o'clock at night to 8 in the morning because this company, they wanted to dub, because this is when X-rated films for a very small amount of time in Australia were available legally. I think even now they're still not, kind of like, it's kind of silly. I mean, they're not as video. You can get them from Canberra, which is the capital city. But yeah, I was a night dubber for about 9 months because this company also had production, but they had no production jobs open at the time. So I did night dubbing and then eventually did that and then started going on shoots as well after my night dubbing shifts. So I was exhausted because I'd literally finish night dubbing at 8 in the morning and then have 1 hour sleep and then go out on shoots. And eventually, it's just one of those things where eventually it was a situation, our sound recorders didn't turn up today. Oh, I'll do it. Then it's like, our camera guy's sick. Who's going to shoot? I'll do it. Eventually just got to a point where they thought, well, this is kind of going to be cheap because we can get this guy who can shoot and direct and record sound. And so I was literally doing that on a few of the very small, low-budget commercials.
And dub porn.
And dubbing porn. So I stopped dubbing porn. And because the funny thing was, during the day, they dubbed for companies like KTEL Video and Palace Video and some religious companies that made Christian videos. So that was why they didn't want any of the big wigs from those companies coming there during the day and seeing that they were also dubbing porn. That was the reason for the night shifts. So anyway, so this is when I spoke to. So I wrote a script called Marauders, which I then and as I said, I went to the owner of the company and said to him, would you add a I told him that he's basically wasting his investment, and convinced him. And a very kind guy. He also gave us a van with a petrol card as well, which we could use the whole time. So we go out. It was amazing to think about it. I guess it's probably because nobody on the crew back in those days, no one had children, no one was married, so everyone was able to literally do virtually 40 weekends in a row to make Marauders. the producers were, as I said, Paul Harrington, who was a good friend of mine, who also eventually went on to be work on the series called The Secret, and the book called The Secret, with Rhonda Byrne. And then my brother, Colin Savage, and then also a young schoolboy at the time who went to Ivanhoe Grammar named Richard Wollstonecroft. So he also came on board sort of as this fascinated schoolboy who wanted to kind of like, his mum just said, can you show him the ropes? He's interested in this. And so he came along and, helped out on this and that, and also became a producer. So we, made the film, and then we sold the film to... there was a local company, a guy called Max Stewart, who was a kind of like an old-time international film distributor. And Max picked up the movie and sold it to several territories. We'd make a huge amount of money on it, but we made, some decent money. And that was kind of the beginning.
First movie then, right?
Yeah, and it got reviewed in Variety even. And of course, David Stratton, the reviewer.
The reviewer, yeah.
Was a
very famous reviewer in Australia. Yeah,
he was appalled by it. He thought it was he thought it was absolutely just appallingly violent and celebrating antisocial behavior. And I must admit, I saw then, it was an interesting example for me, like how maybe my films would get perceived in Australia, because I did see kind of like a bit of a backlash against those kind of movies, which really remained for a long time until maybe like Greg McLean made Wolf Creek, was a little bit more of an embrace of that kind of movie. But I still feel there's never been a huge embrace of those kind of movies in Australia, especially with the film bodies. You know what I mean? The film bodies have never been, that supportive. I've always felt in a way that they should just kind of like bite the bullet and say, okay, we're going to put 50% of our funds into these kind of movies and the rest into sort of, more art house movies. It's just that because the exploitation movies would help them fund the art house movies, which have a harder time making money. To me, I think that would be a more kind of equitable way to approach the matter of kind of, government film financing, which is great to have government film financing. But I've always found it was a little bit biased towards, non-genre stuff, which was sad because non-genre stuff just didn't really make money internationally. So which was kind of like, it changed somewhat because in Australia they brought in the, the producers offset so they're able to, in a way, incentivize people a little bit more. But there's still not a lot of genre films made in Australia. Certainly not as many as I think should be made, because it's a shame, I think, in a way that Australia is not more like a mini Hong Kong. The populations are bigger than Hong Kong, and Hong Kong managed to have a massive industry, a massive homegrown industry. At one time, 400 movies a year, which was pretty amazing. Really sad now what's happened to that industry. But yeah, I made that, and then I spent a long time between Marauders and the next one trying to get money for movies, and I was getting the doors slammed on me just by even a lot of established producers, I'd say. But the only producer I ever met who at least listened to me, and he became a friend eventually, was Daniel Scharf. And, Daniel was at least someone who opened the door at one, he did Romper Stomper and Metal Skin. He was at least someone who at the time opened the door to me. And, I think he thought my film was a bit rough around the edges, which it was. But, I got some encouragement. And then the person who was the most encouraging and became like a mentor to me was an Australian filmmaker who passed now, but his name's Richard Franklin. And, Richard Franklin, who'd made Psycho 2 and Road Games and Cloak and Dagger, and, very well established. He was the first person, professional director, who looked at because it was actually through my ex-wife, and somehow met him. And she said, I met this guy who knows this director. And I said, who? What director? And she said, he manages this guy called Richard Franklin. I'm like, Richard Franklin? Are you serious? He goes, yeah. He said, I told him about your new movie, and he said, oh, yeah, Richard would be happy to have a look at that. I was like, oh, gee, that's nice. So anyway, Richard asked for a VHS. That's how long ago it was. He asked for a VHS. And he watched the movie, and he called me on the phone and said, Mark, I've just watched your movie. Do you want to come down for dinner? So I went down to his house. He lived in Sandringham, outside Melbourne. I went to his house for dinner, sat down with him and his wife, had dinner. And then afterwards, he took me into the living room and put my movie on and played a little bit of it. And he said to me, I realized this film was probably made for nothing at all. And I said, well, yes, it was. And he just said to me, and I don't say this as a boast, this is just what he said, but to me, it just meant a lot. He said, I think you have a real good eye for as a director. You have a very good eye. You're very good at staging, violence and action. And your editing is really dynamic. He said it's one of the most dynamically edited movies that I've seen for quite a while in the low budget area. And I'm talking about, when I say low budget, I mean some low budget is like 2-3 million. But he said, I really think you've done a great. And if you'd been given like $3 million, he said, I think this film would have been like a real indie hit. But obviously, we didn't have name actors. There's no, because we couldn't afford it.
Right.
But for me, the main effect that had on me was just made me feel like I'm doing something right. And despite the fact that I was getting the door slammed on me by a lot of established producers in Australia, this was something where a guy saw some virtue in what I was doing and just didn't almost like put it in the same category as porn.
Yeah, potential. You saw potential.
Yeah, and that means a lot when you're just starting out.
Yeah,
and also it also goes to show how far a kind word can go. If you're an established filmmaker and some young upstart comes up and you have a conversation and you watch his stuff, if you say something nice, it can go a long, long way.
Yeah. It had a huge impact on me because nobody in Australia was making the kind of films I was making at the time, except for Brian Trenchard Smith, and I didn't know him. He was from Sydney, and at one point I did try to reach out to him, and I never had any luck. And he was the one person I thought I'd love to meet, Brian Trenchard Smith. I mean, now, I do have some contact with him. We have conversations now and then, but he was the one person who was making those kind of movies. But even that was still different to mine because my films were a lot darker than his. Like his films, you wouldn't call them dark, but they had great stunts, and you had Grant Page doing great stunts in his movies, and very, very dynamically made movies. But I mean, I was making stuff that was more kind of like, I've always liked very dark theme kind of movies. So I just didn't know anyone who's making those kind of films. And ultimately, that was even probably why I ultimately just finally left after making Sense of New Age Killer and Trailer Passion and Fishnet, because I was still basically finding I was getting nowhere in Melbourne, even though at that time I'd made about 5 movies, and I was still getting almost treated like I was a porno filmmaker. So I just thought, screw this. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life banging my head against a wall. So at the time I had a box set of my films coming out in the US called Savage Cinema from Down Under, and it featured my film Defenseless and Sense of New Age Killer and Marauders. And the company that put it out, he's the guy, Norm Hill, who ran a company called Subversive Cinema. He just said to me, what the hell are you doing making films in Australia, hitting your head against a wall? You really should come back here. So I said, you're right. So the first thing I did was I did a job for him. Because my favorite TV series ever in Australia is Blue Murder, the Michael Jenkins TV crime show. And I went and interviewed Michael Jenkins and did like a making of and a commentary with him on Blue Murder for Norm. So and then I moved back to the States, and from there I sort of started all over again. But at least I had my films from Australia, but they were just received a lot better. I came over here and my box set got very favorably reviewed. I even got like an agent at the time. It wasn't a good agent. I mean, it was a good agency. It was a William Morris agency from the box set. Unfortunately, I got like a junior agent who pretty much, did nothing. But at least I'm thinking that my films they were at least getting me noticed a little bit, and at least I was able to go to people and say I made this without getting looked down upon. You know what I mean? And also the market here is very different, and also the investment situations here very different, because nobody here is getting government money. Everyone here is getting money that's got to go immediately into a competitive distribution market. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's what I talk about. If there's any distribution, the only thing you're competing for is just dollars in distribution. But that's a different kind of competition. But the market here is very different because the whole thing is market driven. Whereas in Australia, it's not as market driven, because if you've got government finance in a film, the government don't necessarily see that as a loan. They see it as a grant. And I think that's great also for a country like Australia, because it doesn't have the large market to support. It would if Australians loved Australian movies, and that's why I think if they made more exploitation movies, I think there would be more love for Australian movies. And I'm not saying the ones that get made, that there aren't a lot of good movies, because there are, but I think there needs to be a more like a $500,000 to a $1.5 million sector that's healthy. Because getting distribution worldwide is much easier now than it used to be. You're not doing prints. You're creating DCPs. So the cost is a lot cheaper. But for me, it was a good move, and it still took me a long time to build connections, because the financial connections took a long time, to finally actually meet people who I could ask to invest in a movie. It took quite a while, but I made good connections. I had a very good mentor from my Detroit days too, a guy called Bert Livingston, who was actually basically the head of US distribution at Fox here at 20th Century Fox. So he was also someone who was always very encouraging, and even tried to get me a Fox movie at some point they was looking for a director. But I understand, but they already had their list of approved directors, and of course I was his indie guy, and he tried really hard, and I got really close to actually doing the movie. But again, kind of got shot down because, of course they found someone who'd done much bigger movies than me. And, I can't argue with that. They had done bigger movies than me, but the whole point was, it was just a more positive environment. So I felt that when I got here, the environment was quite positive, and even like now, I find people have a hard time raising money for films in LA, because everyone does it, and everyone's sick of it. But I mean, I don't raise money in LA. I raise money outside. Like I raise it everywhere but LA. Because there's certain states where the idea of investing in a movie is actually a novelty to people. It's not a novelty in LA. Just like shooting in LA, it's the worst place to shoot for an indie film, because everyone's got their hands out for massive location fees, and it's not conducive to an economically made indie movie. Whereas places like Mississippi, Tampa, Seattle, where I just made a movie, even Hungary, I'm doing a film in Hungary soon too. They're more conducive to making indie movies. So, I mean, that's part of, to me, being a producer, is also identifying where's the best place to make them, and where do you get the best bang for the buck, and then you put all the elements together. But I'm sorry I've answered a question that you asked me 20 minutes ago with a very long-winded response.
No, you just took the long way.
That's good,
man. You just took, I would like to ask you though, Mark, in regards to like your investors. I'm not going to ask you who they are or anything like that. I'm just curious, because that always seems to be the one thing that we all hit that brick wall. What is it that you've been able to do outside? Okay, I get that you've made movies that have made money and people will give you money, but initially, to get somebody to invest, what is it that what is your process of going through to try and get an investor to step up to the plate and give you however much money you need? I'm just curious. I know I'm curious. So
yeah,
$1 million question.
I usually meet. Okay, so first I usually meet people through other people. It's usually just someone saying, "Oh, I know someone who's always wanted to make a movie or whatever." Anyway, so I'll speak to them directly. I mean, generally, what I do that when I meet anyone who I think could be interested, I get to know them before I ever pitch anything. I almost never pitch anything. I almost do the anti-pitch. Like, they'll ask me about my filmmaking, but I'll never bring up a project to them. So eventually they'll say to me, "So you make movies?" And I honestly, most of the time they end up saying to me, "Are you ever looking for investors?" And usually I'll even say, "Oh no, I've got investors." Like I've got people. And I had someone recently saying to me, I said, "Oh no, I've got investors." "What, on your next film you've got investors?" I go, "Yeah, I've got investors. I don't need anyone right now. I'm good." Then they call me up a week later. "Are you sure you got investors? Are you sure you don't need someone else?" So I'll find that the important thing is to tap into what they want in life, because generally the people who I have gotten into relationships where they've financed a film, or they've also or financed and maybe even got a storyline or something, they're usually people who say, "You know something, I got into, say, for example, like, hedge funds, or I got into investing, but I always wanted to be a writer when I was younger. And I remember as a kid, we used to write these little scripts, and I'll say to them, what were the scripts about? Oh, well, I always really like kind of like action stuff, kind of like shoot 'em ups and stuff like that. So, sorry, I'm just going to turn this off. But so I end up saying to them, oh, okay, so you're always interested in like action stuff. And then at some point, I sort of end up saying to them, would you be interested in maybe if you've got a scenario, maybe we could write something together. And then I start getting them invested in a project.
There you go.
And the more you get someone invested in a project, the more they want it to get made. And so, as I said, I've never ever taken a pitch deck to someone I didn't know and said, no, actually, it's not true. I have done that once, and it was just a miserable failure. So no, it's always people who I get to know. So generally, the people I end up making films with, I've already known them for 3 or 4 years, if not 10 years. So even like now, the one I just made, the main, the investment's composed from a few different places, but the main one was someone I've known for 4 years. The next one, someone I've known for 4 years. The one after that, someone I've known for 7 years. So the whole point is I'm constantly nurturing the relationships. And often what people have trouble with, like people often come to me and say, oh, I'm looking for someone who can bring in first money, right? Because everyone's got this idea that, oh, I've got second money. But to me, if you've only got second money, then you don't really have investment that can get a project off the ground. Because second money is an investor, and it's only a potential investor who's saying, oh, okay, so if you get someone to put $1 million in, I might put 200,000 in. But take away the $1 million, that person's never going to invest a damn thing. It was important to me to be someone who can raise first money, because if you can raise first money, then the rest is actually a lot easier. Mm-hmm. Because then you're just getting people to tip money in. So that's why when people say to me, oh, I'd like to meet with you. I've got someone who, if you can come up with $1 million, I want to get involved. I'll say to them, I don't even think it's worth the price of involvement with you for me to do that. Because especially if it's something you don't really like, why are you going to get into bed with someone who's only bringing 20% of the full budget to your movie, but they want control, and half those people who want second money, they want first money out. So, I mean, that was a recent deal, as someone said to me, oh, well, I've got someone who'd put 300,000 in into $1 million, and but the only thing is they just want first money out. And I said, why should they have first money out when my $1 million person who put the money in first, they've got first money out? Oh, well, then my guy won't do the deal. Then my answer to that is, then fine, I don't care. I don't want to do the deal. I'm not going to compromise the first guy who's the one who's really taking the risk. I'm not going to compromise his position and my relationship with that person to basically, sorry, do you mind being second money on this because I've got someone else who wants to put in 1/5 of what you're putting in? Yeah. That's ridiculous. But it's very common. It's very common where someone goes, I've got a second money guy. So now when someone says to me, I've got a second money guy, I'm almost not even interested. That's almost like saying to me, you have no money.
Yeah.
Because the first money you get a film made. I mean, in Australia, and this is again why I had issues. Like when I made the film Sense of New Age Killer, like that was private. That was completely private funding, and the original people investing in that, it was double the money. And so, but it was the same. It was the same person and another person. They were going to put a certain amount of money in. But one of the guys got cold feet. I think his wife was about to divorce him. So she, of course, said, "You're not spending my money on this movie." So then he then said to me, "Look, are we dead in the water now?" And I said to him, "Let me get back to you." I looked at another script I had, and I got back to him and said, "You know what? I can't make the script that we wanted to make." Because otherwise, that makes me look bad if I then say, oh yeah, we can still make it for half the budget, because then he's going to go, then why are you asking for double the budget to make it? So I said to him, the film we were going to make, I can't make it for that. But I know you like action movies, but I do have a script that was called Hitman's Hero at the time. I do have a script, and that one we can make for the money we've now got. And he said, all right, mate, if you feel confident you can make it. And I said, yeah, I can make it for that one. I can't do the other one. And he actually said to me, I appreciate, and it was like a test. He said to me a week later, Mark, I appreciate that you didn't bullshit me about this and you were going to make that for that. He goes, because then I would have known that you were going to put $500,000. I would have known that you were going to put, half the money into your pocket. So to me, I would just say, just nurturing relationships, but you've got to get what people like, what they want to watch. You meet someone, I met someone recently because I'm going to do a sports movie sometime next year, a soccer movie, a girls' soccer film. And this is because I met a guy who's got a daughter, and he said to me, would you ever be interested in doing something like a sports film? And I said, yeah, I do have a script, and I have a script. And so that's where the money will come from. You know what I mean? So again, you never just go to someone with a pitch deck, because if you go blind to them, you're not connecting to any part of that person.
Right.
You've got to get to know the person. So that's why I never pitch people. Like, I've known people who someone has said, oh, you should meet this guy, he's got a lot of money, and pitch him something. And I'm saying, well, it's a bullshit approach from the beginning. You said meet the guy and pitch him something. I think to myself, how would I feel? I mean, I've had people pitching me, but that's a waste of time because I don't have the kind of money of the people I'm pitching to. But the whole point is, I say that even if someone was just pitching me like $1,000 movie, and they came to me and said, okay, nice to meet you, here's my pitch deck, I'd be like, what the hell? Let's get to know each other. You know what I mean? To me, it's a long-term process. Again, value to me, just value relationships and get to know the people, what they want. Get to know what their frustrations are. What's something maybe you could have been, you never got to be. See if you can then make the project something that actually gives them what they've always wanted. Because this is the thing, people with that kind of money, they're not short of money, but often there's still something missing in their life they never got to do.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's often
make
what
their dreams happen.
Yeah, make their dream come true on a different basis. And it's not just meaning making them money, because they've got money. Yeah. It's more important to people like that to do something because they've gone past the point of they're worrying about paying their bills. They literally use their money for experiences, which is why they buy a Lamborghini. It's why they, fly a plane or get a pilot's license. So, money to them is for the freedom to have experiences that they could never do before they had money. So to them, the idea of being involved in the writing of a film project that they can proudly show their wife, their kids, and their friends, they can sit down in the movie when they have a screening and they feel like, I was part of that. Like, that's really, really invaluable. And so I'd say never underestimate the value of that. And it's still important, for them to make the money back if you can, because it's a very competitive market and it's hard to make money back on the indie market. So the thing is, you've also got to, still try to, keep your costs reasonable and understand, you're putting the right elements together. But, I think the really important thing is, and I think it's the same with everything in life. Everybody has needs that if you can satisfy people's deeper needs, then, and I don't mean that, and I don't mean that in a completely utilitarian way, but I mean, because I've found that every person I've made films with, I've become very good friends with. Yeah. They're not just investors. And this is why they're not. I'm very transparent. I'm not the kind of person who says, okay, give me the money, we'll make the movie, it's in my bank account. I don't do it like that. I give them the option. I'll say to them, okay, how do you want to do the deal here? Do you want to open up an LLC that you're also part of? And do we want a bank account that you're also can be a co-signer on checks? I'll always give them the option, because then they know that at any time they can basically look in and see where the money's being spent. Whereas where I've met investors who've said to me, I hated the whole film investment because I didn't have a clue what was going on with my money. And I said, I mean, to me, and I know some producers do that. I never do it that way. I'm always really transparent. And this is the other benefit of that. If you're totally transparent with them all the way and you run into a snag in distribution, or you don't make quite as money back as you had hoped, they understand. Because
you see it more as a partnership.
Yeah, whereas if you shut people out of the process for 6 months and then suddenly call them up and say, oh, by the way, the film's made no money. And you can't do that. That's why I say it's constant being aware of, you got to stay in touch with people. And that is hard work, because if you've got 50 people you're dealing with connected to, 11 different movies, it's an ongoing thing. But I see that as part of my life. lifestyle and my job. So I fly and see people, you know, when people are in town, I go and see them. If I'm overseas, I go and visit people, you know, and I make sure I don't only speak to people just when I want something, because that's the main thing you hear from a lot of investors. Oh, I only hear from this guy when he wants money. And they even complain about their kids the same way. Oh, I only hear from my son when he wants money, you know, and and when you are a high net worth individual, that does tend to be one of your biggest frustrations, that you find that everybody only sees you as someone who they get money from. So the thing is, I'm very aware of that with that feeling with people. So that's why I have friendships with people, and I usually end up, well, as I said, I'm doing pretty much, we just agreed to do another film with a friend in Florida, and because in the last couple of weeks he's been saying, oh, we haven't done a film for a while, and he said to me, you know, let's do this one or that one, because we had another 2 scripts which haven't got made yet, and that was him just suggesting it. He was saying, well, when you want to do it, and he goes, I know you're busy, and then I said, all right, no, I've got 2 months here. Let's do that. We'll do a 3-week shoot there, and you know, whatever. And it's just like, it's good having that thing where you don't feel like you're hustling people, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Well, it's like meeting, the opposite sex, or the same sex. If you swing that way, it's the same thing. The more desperate you seem, you know, if you've got no game, then you're not going to meet anybody. You know, nobody wants to be with someone who looks like and whether it's professionally or personally, you know, nobody's interested in getting with someone who looks like they're desperate and looks like they're a hustler, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing you're saying about pitch decks. You know, pitch deck, you're trying to sell an idea. Yeah. But if you want someone to invest, you got to sell yourself. You got to make them want to invest in you, not so much in the idea. So a lunch meeting or whatever, just to talk about life and filmmaking and who you are and what your fears and worries are in the world and what makes you happy and everything else, is much more beneficial than a pitch deck, you know.
Much more. And I find that I mostly, if it's a first time person I met or just an intro from someone, I pretty much make the priority at the lunch for me. It's just, I'm just asking them about their life.
Yeah, and like you said, you have to be transparent and no bullshit, and it really helps if you actually enjoy that process of meeting people and you know, just being 100% transparent and honest in that type of environment. It would actually really increase your chances of them wanting to help you out.
Yeah, and I think
the other thing, you
tend to forget the whole being transparent part. Because I think there's a lot of times that people are trying to put on this mask of, you know, that they're trying to be somebody that they're not. And it sounds to me, Mark, like you've really kind of perfected that whole, you know, doing it right, taking the communication route, and it's
well, I've tried. I mean,
to hear that.
It's not. Well, I mean, I would just say, I've tried and I keep trying to just do things better. And, you know, and then also, you know, again, it's treating, you know, you try to treat people right on your crew. You try to just be, you know, of course, you've got to be very strong, and sometimes you've got to be harsh with some people sometimes, because, you know, not all crew people, you know, end up working, you know, and so sometimes, you know, you let people go as well. But overall, you know, you nurture people, you know, because everybody, you know, you select people carefully. You sort of give them a good sense of, like, you know, what your idea of quality is. And so you're able to kind of like, eventually you sort of can cull the bad people and you get the good people. Right. And, but yeah, the relationships are really important. And I enjoy that, even though I find in a way socially, I'm actually quite introverted when I don't have something to sort of like focus on. Like I'm not just good necessarily just talking to strangers about nothing, but when it's something that's to do with just like, you know, films or just getting to know someone, it's something I enjoy. But yeah, because I mean, it really is actually good knowing people in other fields who've excelled in other fields as well. Because usually the people who are investing in movies, there's very few people investing in movies who make movies. You know, it's mostly people who are in other fields, and usually films that are not particularly glamorous. And of course, it's almost like a rule. The less glamorous field it is, the more money they're making. You know what I mean? Like, it's like someone goes, well, I'm in garbage disposal, and that person is making a huge amount of money, or they're in shipping, that kind of stuff, or they're in a service that seems like, cleaning factories. Like, those kind of people have a lot of money because they're in essential, non-glamorous fields, which the average person is not attracted to, because the average person is attracted to what they see glamorous fields. So these people are fine though, because that means there's more money for them in those non-glamorous fields to then also invest in something which to them is maybe investing in a dream, which is often sometimes making a movie, or even like occasionally I make videos for people, that kind of thing. But I mean, it's all part of acknowledging, I think, as a director, at a very early age, going, I'm going to have to know about distribution, because I take it through the whole process. I go from raising the money, I go to pre-production, I write the script, and I also am involved in delivery, in distribution, write the whole process. So the whole point is, I knew it would all help me at some point, because making films is a very multi-pronged discipline with many stages, and every stage has got to be watched like a hawk.
Yeah.
And also multiple stages, like even like now, I just had a film come out this week. Then I had did a sound mix yesterday, and then I've just started editing the other film, the one I just shot in WA, and then I'm just about to leave for Australia. But as soon as I come back, I start pre-prod on the next one. So you're also kind of like, doing them all at the same time. But in a way, to me, I actually find that helpful, because working on several that are at different stages, I don't find it, it's a lot of work, but I don't find it confusing, because in a way, it gives me a break from each stage to move on to a little bit of something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just going back to what you said before about those non-glamorous professions wanting to invest in film, the cliche in the US used to be talk to your dentist,
Yes.
because they used to invest in film.
That doesn't always work.
And what I always tell people, no, but what I always tell people is, if with those types of investors, you want to try to fulfill their dream. And sometimes their dream is as simple as seeing their name in the credits on the big screen. That's it.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's what that's what the whole crowdfunding that's what the whole crowdfunding model is. That's people wanting to see their name as an executive producer, have a little cameo or whatever. So and it
works.
That's working very well, I think, and it's also particularly good because it's almost found its own footing, because a lot of those people are not necessarily people who can afford to invest in an entire movie themselves, but they've got a little bit of disposable income. So they've got a little bit of money that they can indulge in something like that, rather than, for example, maybe one of the people I go to who are people who can afford to invest a larger sum of money, even though I'm not going to people who are worth, $1 billion, but, I'm going to people who are definitely what you consider a high net worth individual, so that you don't have to, so that they meet the criteria of the Securities and Exchange Commission, where you don't have to have a prospectus. I remember in Australia when I used to first started, trying to work out how to raise money, being told, well, if you want to go to people directly, you've got to have a prospectus. And then it was like, I found out it can cost you $80,000 to actually create a prospectus, which is, so that was why. And then I thought, well, how else can I do this? And then what it was, and in Australia, it wasn't called high net worth, but it was something like that. It was people who are established enough that the government deems them, they can look after themselves, as opposed to someone, for example, with an average income who they believe needs some protection, which is why they have the prospectus. But that was the only way I was able to do it in Australia then, because I go, well, I'd better meet some people who've actually got a certain amount of net worth, because I don't have 80,000 to basically, pay for a prospectus.
Right.
And
again, it's very different levels, like at the lower end of indie, the crowdfunding model really works.
Yes.
A bit higher up, say where you are, you deal with private investors and all of that. But you were talking before about first money and second money.
Yes.
And it's funny that I was trying to find funding for a project, and it just reminded me of that. And somebody I was talking to said, look, I'm willing to put in 25K if you can find, 100K, I'll put in another 25.
Right.
And I said to them, I'm indie. If I had 100K, I would be on set right now.
Yes.
What do I need you for?
Yeah. It's a constant thing where everyone seems to know someone who's got second money, but I think it's only because the amount of people who will jump in because I mean people are feel more confident when someone else has already invested a lot of money. But that's why to me the true valuable investor is the person who truly takes the initial risk. And the risk is on what you would call first money. But I don't really even look at it as first money. I just look at it as, budget for the movie. You know what I mean? Because I generally will find, already have like either two or one person in mind and say, well, that's a person who's going to finance a movie. I'll get to these two people, but I'm not going to either of them saying you're first or second. It's just like, do you want to get it? And I bring them in at the same time. And then they share and money goes out directly to them right away. I'm not prioritizing who gets what, because these are two people I've gone to around the same time. It's different if someone comes in, maybe if someone's dropped out and it's literally the last hour and you have someone jumping in, putting something up. But I've just never had that situation. But I'm not saying I wouldn't ever have it, but I don't deal in the budgets that are kind of like tricky enough. I'm not doing budgets of 10, 15, 20, $50 million. That's a whole other area. And I'm not in that area, I don't know if I wouldn't want to be in that area as a producer because that's a whole other discipline that I don't have the skills in that area.
It's that much tougher, getting any money back on that type of budget. And that's what people don't appreciate. I always say, like, a good tip for indie filmmakers is try to make the money back for the investors, even if they don't make a profit on it. Just get them their money back. Work your ass off to make that happen. As far as profit, try. Just try as hard as you can. All they want is to get their money back and to see you try. And usually if they get their money back, they are probably at least 60-70% more likely to put money in again on your next project.
True. That's right. That's pretty much how it works, because they get the money back, then the exercise in having their dream made true means that they didn't really lose anything in pursuing the dream. They took a risk, they got something back. And I always tell people, I'm always very, very upfront. I'll always tell people that you may not make anything at all. Like, I'll never say, and anyone who ever says it is completely full of shit. Like, I'll never say to anyone, "Oh, I'm guaranteeing you'll make at least your money back." No, you can't even.
How would you know?
I can't guarantee anything like that. So when someone says that, and occasionally someone will come to me and say, "Oh, this guy's just guaranteed I'll make my money back," and I said, "Is he a bank? Does he have money from the mafia or what?" I said, "No, nobody can guarantee that at all, because unless they own a distribution company that has already basically pre-bought your movie, then no one can guarantee, because no one can twist someone's arm and say, buy this person's movie." I said, you need to run 100 miles an hour away from someone making those kind of guarantees. I'll never make guarantees. I've talked a lot of people out of investing in films. Plenty of people, because especially people who don't have a high net worth that much, and they'll say to me, "Oh, I'd love to invest in one of your movies," and I'll just say to them, What are you worth? No, I'll just say to them generally, what are you worth? And they'll tell me, and then I'll say, it's not worth investing in this, because if you don't make your money back, you're going to lose half your wealth.
Yeah,
it's not worth it.
And guaranteeing anything just kind of you're setting yourself up to fail, because if you give them a certain percentage and then even if you give them a profit but you come up a little short, they're not going to invest again.
No,
because you guaranteed something and you didn't get there. So it's always best to be transparent. Show them how you plan to get money back, but as with every other investment, there's always risk.
True. Yeah, that's right.
It's funny, we got to talking a lot about sort of behind the scenes stuff and indie filmmaking. We didn't really get to talk more specifically about your project, and I think we're almost running out of time. So we'll definitely need to set up for another one.
Yeah, I knew we were going to have to do another one with Mark.
That's fine.
I do have a
but
question.
you yeah.
I just do have a question. Am I okay to ask what's the largest budget that you've had on any one of your projects?
Let's just say under 3 million is the largest.
Okay.
Yeah, won't say which one it was, but yeah, under 3 million is the largest. Yeah, I haven't gone bigger. I haven't gone bigger than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always say to people, asking a filmmaker about their budget is like asking a woman how much she weighs. Be careful.
Yeah. Well, you're right.
That's always the stigma of what we do. It's like,
Right.
well, I can tell you had a low budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What the difference does that make? Okay, I said the F word. I'm gonna have to blank that out. But
Yeah.
but to me, it's like, what difference does it make how much money I had? Did you watch the movie? Did you enjoy it? So
I agree, and that's definitely why I also make it a point of telling anyone in connected with a movie, do not list. I mean, not that they usually know the budget anyway, except for the other producer, but I always say, do not list any budget on IMDb or anything like that, because because people often do make a judgment before even seeing the movie.
Yeah.
On that. And so I notice sometimes people will put a budget up on IMDb, but almost none of them are ever right, because I never, ever have announced budgets on IMDb or anywhere like that, because I just don't. And there's no way anyone can know what the budget is, because it's either just myself and the line producer, and the line producer is always a trusted person who I'm working with. So but because it's definitely true that, and I've seen it before where someone's actually told a distributor what the budget is, and then so the distributor then makes an offer immediately, which is like an MG that's half the budget.
Yeah. No, I've listed my budgets on short films,
right?
Because it's always my goal to make a film that looks like it was made for more.
Yes.
So it's more of a personal exercise for me. If I spend $10,000 on a movie, I want it to look like a $50,000 movie or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but definitely I could see your point. Yeah.
I'm the same. I mean, I try to. And whether I succeed or not is obviously not for me to decide. But the whole thing is, I try to make films that have a certain sheen to them, a certain cinematographic kind of like aesthetic to them. It really matters to me, and because a lot of that is something that you don't. It's not only money that gives you that. So often occasionally some people will send me their own movies, and they'll say to me, "What do you honestly think?" And sometimes I'll tell them, I honestly think this is a shitty looking movie and you've got no excuse why it should look shitty. And they go, what do you mean? We only had like $100,000. I go, that's a lot of money to make. I mean, there's no excuse to make $100,000 film that looks shitty. Go back and you either spent the money in the wrong place, or you didn't have a good cinematographer. And that's what it usually is. It's like they didn't pay a good cinematographer. They didn't pay someone who can light. I mean, there's no excuse. I mean, at any level, you can still have a good looking movie because you can use reflectors. You can frame it nicely. You can make sure it's in focus. That in itself is not a money thing. That is a hiring skilled people thing. And
absolutely.
And if you can't hire skilled people, then you're not yet ready to spend any kind of money on films. You've got to work. You've got to start working on the aesthetic a little bit more.
Yeah, I've seen films that were made for those kinds of budgets, and I always say you would have done better if you would have hired a student cinematographer.
Yes.
Because there are some very talented people who can do a better job than what you got there, and there's just no excuse. Yeah, I agree.
There really is no excuse. I always get I don't beat around the bush with that kind of thing because because I've always been very, very. I mean, I'm very harsh on myself. So the whole point is, and so I will always tell people, because when they ask and then they'll get angry, I say, well, you asked. But I'm hoping it's constructive. All I'm saying, you're the director. It reflects poorly on you. If you've got bad actors, it reflects poorly on you. If you've got bad cinematography, that's on you. Because on the first film that I made on Marauders, like an idiot, I hired a couple of people, like one woman I hired on the night before the shoot because another girl dropped out. So instead of saying, why don't we put off the next shoot for another week so I can find someone good? Idiot me goes to a party that night, sees a girl across the room, and said, "You'd be good for the rape scene, wouldn't you?"
Oh,
And then on the next day,
worst one-liner ever.
and on the next day, she's got a bunch of lines to do, and she's terrible. And I'm going, oh, she's so bad. And so first I'm angry at her. Then later on, I'm thinking, why are you angry at her? She's never done it. You convinced her to do the movie that you should have waited a week because it reflected poorly on you. And when I watch the film now, it's the only scene I really cringe at because the performance is terrible, but it's my fault. It's not her fault.
Owning it, yeah. At least you know you're aware and you own it.
There are so many people out there that won't own it ever. Yeah. And people that can't take criticism. I mean, if you can't take somebody, you know, I mean, we've all had our Amazon Prime feedback, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it ain't. And and if you can't handle somebody talking, you just go bye-bye, you know.
I agree.
Yeah.
But you definitely. But you got to own it too. You know, you got to own it when you can't look at something and say, oh my gosh, this is like the best thing I've ever done. And then everybody around you's going, oh yes. And then, you know, there's a handful of people that are going, dude.
Yep. Yes.
Really? That's
self-awareness
can do.
Yes.
Okay.
And self-awareness does go a long way, and a lot of people think that their films are like gold, you know, and sometimes they send them to me and I watch them and I say, look, you have a lot of issues with this, with that, you know, it could have been better, and then the next thing is they block me.
Yes.
And I love that.
I don't want to play in your sandbox anymore.
Yeah, you ask me for my opinion. I spend an hour and a half, 2 hours watching your movie, thinking about it. I give you feedback and you block me. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's definitely someone I don't want to be, you know, in contact with. No, so the problem is then they go on social media, they try to badmouth you and to sabotage everything you do, and you know.
Oh yeah, it's
ridiculous.
You're right. It's this reality of the business. I mean, I think it's probably two people. And they're probably people I think I know from years ago in Australia. Every time I make a movie, they write shitty reviews, and I know kind of by their syntax who they are. And you just have to. It's just something that happens. You just have to live with it, you know. And I always think of a filmmaker that I've always admired. I don't like all his movies, but I absolutely loved his commitment to cinema, which was the Spanish director Jess Franco. And Jess made 175 features, which is just mind-blowing. And some of them are really great, and some of them, you know, not so great, and some of them are just terrible. But I so admire that guy because he just kept making movies and movies and movies, and he clearly never let, and obviously it was pre-internet, maybe they would have destroyed him on the internet at the time. Yeah. But Jess made 175 movies and managed to still just keep on making them, and a lot of them got slammed. Some of them got well reviewed, but I always think of him whenever I get any kind of shitty review. I just said, "Look, what would Jess say?" And Jess would say, "I don't give a shit. I'll make another movie."
Yeah,
and that's all you can do, right?
Yeah, very similar to like a Roger Corman. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. You just keep moving ahead, and you know, I love the process. I mean, I love the fact that I do make a living just making movies. Every day I'm making movies. So I figure then I'm happier, because people are saying to me, funny thing is I have people often say to me, oh, you must really like one day would love to have like an Oscar. Couldn't give a shit. I don't even think about anything like that. Like that's so separate from wanting to make movies to me. You know, the whole idea of an Oscar, you know, like I just want to keep making movies because I know one day I probably won't be able to keep making movies. You know, like I'm gonna be either feeble, my investors have run out, I'm gonna be sick or whatever. But but right now I'll just keep making it. And if I die making movies on the set, then fine.
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely. It's like it's beautiful because you've come to the right place. We didn't call the show the Straight Shooters for nothing. We're very upfront about everything. But
well, I really enjoyed talking to you guys. Like, and I really love your vibe, and also I also have been, following, whenever I can, what you've been doing, because I think you've done a fantastic job of creating like a really interesting hub for filmmakers and filmmaking. And it's interesting because what you're doing is almost, for me, even impossible to completely comprehend, because you seem to have your hand in many different pots. And I think it's great because you're almost like becoming like an interesting indie brand unto yourself, which is a great place where people can feel at home, talking to you and soaking up the kind of indie vibe that you've created. So I really respect that.
I just realized that, MyIndie Productions was actually how you and I kind of got talking in the first place, because Bill Oberst Jr., he's part of that community, and I was promoting a few films of his that you made. So it's awesome how people can connect, through that kind of thing. But what you were saying before about, about your goals, like for Oscars and stuff like that, people ask me that, not about Oscars, but about Hollywood. And I say to them, I'm in indie not because I have to be. It's a choice. This is where I want to be. I don't want to go to Hollywood. Right. I'm not interested.
Yes.
I want to make films that I want to make, and I want to get to a point where I make enough money from them to live off of it and keep making films. That's all I care about.
Yeah.
Just want to make
exactly.
more films.
And
I'm the same.
Yeah. And I've worked in Hollywood. I did a 5-year stint in post-production. Yeah. And you couldn't pay me to go back.
Yeah.
It was
I know what you mean, because I know people who work in this, but you work in that process. And to me, aside from occasionally a larger paycheck, it feels like hell. That kind of filmmaking to me is more like hell.
Yeah.
I love the fact that I get to work with people, get to work with friends, make the movies with friends. We don't have anybody. There's no one above us who's basically calling us at midnight, saying, I'm not happy with this, I'm coming to the set to close. There's none of that crap going on. Get to make the movie. So essentially I'm doing an extension of what I did as a kid, making Super 8 movies. I'm just making slightly bigger movies, but making a living doing it, and making stuff that I'd want to see, and stuff hopefully that as a viewer then other people want to see, because I'm pretty, I see a lot of movies myself. I'm a huge cinephile myself. So the whole point is, I was a film fan first. I'm a film fan first, and I have absolutely no qualms praising other people's films. I mean, this is one thing I also felt working with some other filmmakers in the past, who I won't mention, but some of them weren't even able to talk about other people's films. It was such a weird thing. I'd say, what other films? I never watch anyone else's films, and I thought, what are you talking about? And whereas I feel completely comfortable praising other people's films, because again, I'm not in competition with these people. They're people making films that I really admire. Like probably the most recent one, I loved that film X. I thought that was a really great.
Ty West.
Yeah, the Ty West film. I thought that was.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet.
I really enjoyed that. I mean, I have a film, Brian Avenay Bradley, who makes indie films, and he makes great films too. And Tim Chismar, who's a producer. I just made Hell's Coming for You with Tim, and Tim and I have got a lot of stuff planned as well along the lines of Hell's Coming for You. So yeah, I mean, it's just good working with different producers and with different sensibilities. It's really interesting. I mean, another person I've always really admired is Takeshi Miike, the Japanese filmmaker, because he's also been incredibly prolific. He's made all kinds of movies, and he's still making movies. He's not quite as prolific as he used to be now, I think, because the market has changed. He was making like sometimes 7 or 8 movies a year. I mean, but he's made more than 120 features, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. But
his budgets have increased.
His budgets have increased, so that's why his films now, he's not making
less films. Yeah,
he's making many. But yeah, there's a lot of still really interesting filmmakers. I can't remember the name of the guy, but the guy who did the Shining remake, I really like his films. Mike Flanagan. Yeah, Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
The Dr. Sleep, the sequel.
Sleep. I like Mike Flanagan's films. I mean, I like all kinds of movies. I mean, from John Waters to, Fly Away Home is one of my favorite movies. That's like a kid's film. I love that film. And I like all kinds of movies. But I mean, that's a good thing about making movies, is that you're in a purely creative world. And to me, the greatest thing about indie films, it really is more of a purely creative world than a business world. You know, you have an element that's business, but I get the sense that the studio films, it's really heavily business. You know, and because I know people who want to make slight changes, and it's literally, they have a meeting about basically making tiny little changes to something, and they've got to run it by like 5 or 6 other people. Whereas, you know, in my films, it's like, if I decide that, okay, we've got, you know, 4 hours instead of 6 hours, it's me saying to the producer and the DP, oh shit, okay, don't bother about that because I'm not going to shoot there now. Let's just shoot there and there. And that's our meeting, you know?
And you don't have anybody going, Johnny Fontaine never gets that movie. I don't care how many Dago greaseballs come out of the woodwork, you know.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said for not having to kiss ass, and for having a certain control, even if the budgets are modest. But I'd much rather have control over a modestly budgeted film than have almost zero control over like a big budget film, you know.
Yep.
It's something about. You talked about praising other people's work, and people also ask me about that, and I always say the same thing. I praise people's work, even if I didn't like the film.
Yes.
I liked certain things about it. It's not my to my taste. It's not my kind of film, but that doesn't make it bad.
I agree.
It just makes it that I didn't love it because of the things I love about film. But there's so many things that are positive about it that I can still praise. But people look for things to criticize and to
go on the attack versus
right.
Because
they feel that if
done.
if they feel that if they say something bad about somebody else's film, it makes their film better for some reason. I just don't get that.
Yeah, it's very kind of insecure, kind of like thinking. It's very small-minded. But I remember there was a great quote from the advertising guru David Ogilvy. I read his book years ago, which was a great book about advertising, but just also, you know, being able to, being persuasive, but also his management style, and something I never forgot. And I think it's a fantastic piece of advice. Well, also just a fantastic philosophy. He said, "Small-minded people work with and hire dwarves. High-minded, talented people hire giants."
Nice.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I love that. That stuck with me all my life. Yeah, so that's why with me, I'd like, if someone said, okay, do you want to work with a cinematographer who's done, 100 movies, or do the person who's done 2 movies? I'll go with 100, because you're hiring, because if someone can say, oh yeah, but the young person's hip and young or whatever. But no, but the 100 movie person is going to have little tricks, and I'm going to learn from them. Because their skills get passed down to me.
True.
And, I'd always rather learn from somebody because as filmmakers, we're always students anyway. There's no point when you stop being a student. There's never a film you make and go, that's easy.
Things like that.
Yeah. That's what I always say. I'll stop learning new things when I die, but before that, you can always improve.
Exactly.
No film is perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's the beautiful thing, I think, about kind of where we are and finding people who think in that way, because relationships is what it's all about. And if everybody collaborated, we would actually all get somewhere rather than trying to make people fall away just for us to get ahead and all of that. It's just so dumb.
Right.
Yeah. You're right.
I definitely think we will need to do this again, so we could talk more specifically about about some of your films, because there's a lot to talk about. A lot of interesting stuff there.
Thank you so much. And if anyone wants to see anything that just came, as I said, my film Bringing Back Dead just came out this week, so it's on a lot of the cable systems and the VOD systems. That's someone with Louis Mandylor, who's an Australian, and Daniel Baldwin and Gary Daniels, who's a martial arts, really skilled martial arts actor. He was very well known in the 80s and 90s. Did films with Jackie Chan as well. So that was a very interesting experience. We shot that. It's almost like exactly this time last year. I actually shot that one. So that one just came out. It's the most recent.
Yeah, and it's very much a kind of feels like a bit of a love letter, I guess, to kind of 70s revenge exploitation and martial arts and heist films.
I loved it.
Yeah,
it's got
definitely more influence. Yeah, definitely more because that was the first one in a long time that I'd made that I hadn't written. I think it was maybe the first one ever that I've made that I hadn't written. So it was an interesting experience. Yeah, just working from someone else's scripts where it wasn't kind of imprinted with my kind of little, peccadillos and my little obsessions and things like that. So it was an interesting process. In some ways, it was like a bit of a freeing process because I wasn't married to something in terms of the way that I saw it. You know how sometimes you're writing it and you already get in your head how it would be. I didn't have, of course, those preconceptions because I didn't write the script, and I didn't really make that many changes to the script either because there just wasn't really the opportunity to. But it was an interesting experience, just like doing that from that point of view. But as I said, I didn't know. I was an exec producer on that, so I brought some money to it, but just a little bit. But it was just good to just direct that one. But it was a tough directing because I got Lyme disease while making it, which was really terrible. Luckily, I also overcame it because I got it just in time to be able to basically smash it with very heavy antibiotics and that type of thing. But it was a really tough one to make because I was literally had a temperature of about 103 through the entire production. So I was
wow.
And it was in a forest, in very, very humid forest in Oneonta in upstate New York at this time last year. So
wow.
In some scenes, like I could almost sort of tell how hot it was from the actors kind of struggling, sweating a bit, and
it was very very hot. And it was one I really needed. It was one I just really felt I was pushing and pushing in the sense of trying to get stuff done because I felt all the time like sitting down and sleeping. But it's just one of those things where, again, when you're trying to get the production values, it's like, okay, let's walk in there and set up the dolly in there, whereas it would have been so much easier just put a longer lens and just go on a tripod. It was just one of those things I kept pushing. But I kept thinking of one of my heroes, Kaneto Shindo, who made films till he was 98. And I kept saying, dude, you're like almost half his age, and maybe I'm not actually a bit older than half his age, but the whole thing I said, you're half his age, what would Kaneto Shindo do? Shut up, just go and keep pushing forward. And that's what I was doing in making the movie,
Nice.
Because
you got to do to get it done, right?
Yeah.
And the dream has changed. We no longer in indie make films with the idea of having it seen on the big screen. No. Now we're like, if this gets a little bit of a physical distribution and gets on all the platforms for streaming, that's all we want. But sometimes we still have to push ourselves to make it, as best as we can, and still shoot for that quality, for the big screen quality.
Well, I guess because if you think about it, because people have moved to having very big screens at home, I often think, well, if you think of the ratio between where they're sitting and the screen they're looking at, it is pretty much still similar to being at a cinema, unless you're the person who sits at the back all the time. But, so in a way, the screening conditions, aside from the fact that you're in an auditorium, the size is still really important because they're still looking at a big, and a lot of people have good surround. So even when I was doing the mix yesterday, and me too, I have a really good surround system. And so when I was doing the mix yesterday, the mixer and I, Steve, we very much, he was saying, he kept saying to me, did you hear the music go right behind you there? It went right in the back, because he did a lot of really great surround music pieces. And and I said, I'm loving that. And he said, well, of course, probably 90% of the country is not going to hear that. I go, but 10% is going to hear it, because they've got really good surround systems. And we still very much treated it like, we never said, oh, well, screw it, we don't have to try as hard. No, I always shoot for like it's going to be theatrical, or at least it's going to have on someone's 8.1 or 7.1 or 5.1 sound system, and they're going to want the sound really pristine and everything in its place. I mean the sound mixing, especially the final one, that's one of my absolute favorite pleasures of filmmaking. Like sitting in on that final mix is just fantastic, because you're also hearing all the Foley. And also on this one, I hadn't heard any of the Foley, and this film, Hell's Coming for You, has a huge amount of like gunplay and fighting and stuff, and really surreal kind of stuff. So it was just so good to see what they'd done with the scenes. It just was blowing me away, just as a viewer. So it was a really, really, really satisfying experience.
Yeah, we don't make films for cinema, but we still try to make them cinematic. That's a big
Yep.
thing, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And home cinemas are cinemas too.
Yeah, I agree, and and because I think you really do have to embrace it as true cinema as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I got a
That's
better
awesome.
sound system than my local theater does, so
Yeah, right.
I definitely need to improve mine.
Yeah, we're working on that. We're doing a crowdfunding for the Itai to raise money so he could get a better surround sound system at his house.
No, I think I'll do that. I'll do that after I move
that's great.
at some point.
I got to say, Itai, I'm very impressed with your collection. Your shelf is like mine, except the reason, I don't know if you can notice, but I have 3 of these upstairs, and the only reason it's got stuff on it down here now, it's now spilling from upstairs back down here again. So I can see you've got a beautiful collection there.
It's only part of the collection, but
I relate.
I don't know, maybe in the last 10 years or so, I got rid of quite a lot of them. I sold them off, decided that I just can't deal with the.
Right.
I need 2 houses to store them, so it's like it's time to get rid of them.
Yeah.
So, but some I can't bring myself to get rid of.
I relate to that.
Itai and I one night decided we were going to have like who's got more copies of The Godfather and who's got more.
Oh, you win hands down.
And so he starts taking pictures. And he's I got this and this and this, and I go, yeah, hold on a second, I'll be back in 5 minutes.
I would never try to compete with you on that.
Yeah, I sent him. I think I sent him like 9 pictures, and I said, "Yeah, and these are just the ones that actually have shelves."
Wow!
If Todd has a collector's edition of Sharky's Machine on soundtrack on vinyl, I can't compete with that.
Oh, that's it. No, that's it. I actually because that just came out on vinyl, just very recently. I think
Sharky's.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I know that I have a friend and he and I both collect both. If it's only on vinyl, we'll get it. I mean, I'd rather have it on CD, but if it's only on vinyl, I'll get it. But I also have this this ridiculously obsessive collector's mentality going right back to laser discs. So
yeah.
Have you, Todd? Did you start with laser discs yourself?
You know what? I couldn't afford laser discs.
Right.
I had a pretty hell of impressive VHS collection that when DVDs came out, I was just completely sold. I mean, on the DVDs. And so I kind of slowly got rid of my VHS. I mean, I had shelves and shelves and shelves of DVDs or VHS. Never did the laser disc though, because when those were coming out, they were really expensive and I just couldn't afford it.
Yeah, it's funny. They were so expensive that when people complain, every now and then someone will complain about, Synapse are bringing out some new movie and it's $60, but it's got like 4 discs and it's 4K and it's got a booklet. I'll say to them, $60. I come from Laserdisc, where I once paid $300 for a copy of Hard Boiled.
Yeah.
Laserdisc. So whenever someone complains about a beautiful special edition with booklets and soundtracks and it's $60, I'll go, try Hard Boiled for $300 and it was cut.
Yeah. It wasn't even the full movie.
It wasn't even the full version. Like that was the most insane Laserdisc I ever bought. It was 2 Hong Kong Laserdiscs from Hong Kong. Yeah, 2 Hong Kong Laserdiscs, but they were in fact it was a cut edition of it.
Oh, wow.
And my brother and I, like 2 idiots, both bought them at the same time rather than going home and checking them. So between us, we'd spent $600 on the cut version of Hard Boiled.
Wow.
As you guys are saying this, I'm realizing that I stopped being a collector when I started making films.
Right.
Because the decision then became, do I buy this $50, $60, collection version, collector's edition, or do I buy the regular one for $20, or do
Yes.
I pay 70 for this? I'm like, nah, that $50 is going to go into the movie.
I just
You
let
know, that's how I.
Yeah.
I just let the prices drop when everybody else is
Right.
like spending,
True.
like they're putting out all the Halloween movies on 4K now. Scream Factory is throwing those out. Everybody's like, oh, I got that. Oh, I got that. And I'm just sitting back going, I'm just going to wait till the price drops.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still stuck on DVDs. I haven't moved to Blu-ray even.
Oh, really? I've moved to 4K on some titles, but there's a lot of titles I'm not going to get on 4K because I started buying. They were bringing out these packages where you could get a blue and a 4K in the same box.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of weaned me onto 4K. But there's a lot of stuff still that I don't need to get on 4K because the Blu-rays are really good.
Yeah. The Blu-rays are pretty amazing. And plus when they put out, I've only got a couple of 4K. Well, a couple, maybe I got 6 4Ks. And I was stupid disappointed in the release of Scarface.
Oh yeah,
the 4K on Scarface was horrible.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely horrible. And
my Scarface DVD is great.
Yeah.
and so was the Scarface Laserdisc. Actually, speaking of Scarface, the best Scarface thing that came out recently was the complete score that came out about 2 months ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
on
they
CD.
the whole thing.
That's fantastic because that had never been released before. And the funny thing is, I was a Facebook friend for a while with Giorgio Moroder. This is a funny story. Giorgio Moroder at one point says that there is almost kind of like it was like a semi pirate version of Scarface that was out. He said, if anyone wants to do that, they can always go there. But I wrote to Giorgio and said, Giorgio, why did you put you put a certain cue on that? You said that's a main theme. It's not the main theme. And he says, of course it's a main theme. I know it's a main theme. I go, no. You are missing a stem. There's a stem missing. And he said, and he got back to me and said, you know what? You're right. It's missing a stem. And so I think he was ready to kind of tear me a new one. But I was such an annoying little shit telling him that there really was. I have a very good, I'm quite obsessive about scores. And so I was able, and then he got back to me and said, you're right. That's the mono. He said the original mono, it's a dual mono track, and that is missing a complete layer, or as I said, a stem. And he said, yeah, it was. So I wrote to him, I hope that new stem is back on the new Scarface, official Scarface. And he wrote back and said, yes, it is.
Nice.
Very nice.
Right on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it. We have come to the end of our conversation, which by the sounds of it is probably going to be the first of many conversations that we're going to have with Mr. Mark Savage. Mark, if people would like to get a hold of you, do you have social media or email or anything that you'd like to throw out there for people?
I am on Instagram. It's just called @SavageDirector.
Okay. All right, that's the easiest way to get a hold of you.
Yeah, that'd be the best way. I mean, I do have like a regular kind of like Facebook page, but yeah, at Savage Director would probably be the best way to go.
Okay, all right, awesome. And if people want to get a hold of us, Mr. Itai Guberman, how do they do that?
Oh, they can find us as always through Facebook. We have the Facebook page for the Straight Shooters. On Instagram, obviously, the email that keeps floating around this video all over the place. And they can find both Todd and myself on MyIndie Productions on the website, myindieproductions.com, MyIndie Productions page, group, etc. We are around. We're easy to find.
We're super easy to find. And Mark, just one last thing. If people want to look for your movies, what platforms can they go in search of?
At the moment, the latest movie just is basically on the Spectrum cable system. That'd be a good way to find it. Otherwise, I've got probably my last 4 movies are on Tubi, and also on iTunes, on Hulu, and on Amazon.
Awesome.
And Purgatory Road, which you guys had said you like, Purgatory Road's also on Blu-ray from Unearthed. So that's a really good way to watch it, because it's definitely the best quality version is the Blu-ray from Unearthed.
Gotcha.
Another MyIndie connection, because Stephen Bureau is also one of our artists.
Oh yes, no, Stephen's a good friend of mine too. Yeah, he's a great guy, and he runs a great company.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching this episode of the Straight Shooters. Make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe. We really appreciate everybody watching this show. And make sure you catch up with us next time right here on the Straight Shooter Show.